Previously on the Two Fish at the Table podcast.
Yeah, and also they aired the trailer for season 2 of Chase the Dream, which we reviewed on this podcast. So I'm really excited to see that. I mean, it was really good trailer, and
I'm excited about Chase the Dream Season 2 due to the trailer we saw with RecPoker and
kind of weird. I would like to review Chase the Dream.
Yeah. Shuffle the deck and deal the scene. Two brothers diving where the stakes get mean. Sam's got hair like a wild cascade. Ben's a healer, twin by trade. They talk the chips, they talk the screen. Every poker flicking in between. The two fish at the table, oh, they're keeping it real. Breaking down the hand, spinning that wheel. Ben and Sam with the cards in their hands, flipping the flop, making us fans.
Welcome, everyone, to our latest review of Chase the Dream, even though we are wide awake. Not sponsored by RecPoker, not quite yet. Not sponsored by Chase the Dream, not quite yet, but maybe one day. I'm your host, East Coast Sam.
and I'm the other host, Legend Ben One on PokerStars. Yes, it's about 3 years ago, in fact, that we reviewed Season 1 of Chase the Dream, and after a brief scare that Season 2 was going to be a podcast discussion type format, I was happy to learn last year that Season 2 was going to be made in the traditional style of Season 1 and not be some alternative format. And over the course of September up until the middle of January, the episodes of Season 2 dropped one by one. There were a total of 11 episodes. We've watched all of them. I have my mountain of notes here. I'm happy to discuss and see where Chase the Dream Season 2 improved upon Season 1, where it kept things similar, and where maybe some things I might have changed had I been the one behind the editing button.
Yeah, I mean, technically speaking, there's actually 10 episodes, not 11, but the last episode was divided into two, so we'll just call it 11. Yeah, about 20 minutes for each episode, some a little bit longer, some a little bit shorter. In season 1, we focused on 3 different players, including Rob Garner, who's the director of it. Rob is back this time around, but there's really a whole team of people, including Jim Reed, the head of RecPoker, who we interviewed for our 100th episode, and everybody should just go and check that out right now. Great guy. But we have a lot of other players that are introduced kind of throughout this season, and you get to hear their stories. And there are a lot of them are filming footage, it seems, on their phones or on handy cams. Rob also got a camera. And he sort of bobs and weaves throughout. Like, so the last couple episodes really focus on Rob, but the first few episodes focus on some other players too, which is nice.
Yeah, and really the origin of us covering this season of Chase the Dream really kind of began not only with the great discussion we had with Jim Reed and also us appearing on their podcast, on the Rec Poker podcast, but I had a great discussion with Rob after our interview just about kind of the background of Season 1, him sort of agreeing with our thoughts on Season 1, where things were maybe a little bit off center here and there, and really he had mentioned to me that the main goal of Season 2 was to establish storylines, to expand the focus. There's really 7 players spotlighted, but a couple other players pop in for an interview or two here and there. So it was a bit more focus. And unlike Season 1, where even though it was supposed to be the poker entrepreneur, the poker professional, and the poker recreational, but where KL Clayton kind of got the short end of the stick, there's much more of a widespread focus on more than just 1 or 2 players, so that we get a bit more poker lifestyle vibes and more, just more interesting, diverse content compared to Season 1.
Yeah, I mean, each player feels different. I mean, episode 1, we're introduced to Craig Savage, who is a classroom teacher and studies psychology, I believe. And we see a little clip of him lecturing in his room. But he's a pretty experienced poker player. I mean, it seems like he's had a bunch of cashes. This is not his, first rodeo. Then we have Diana Shabatin, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, who seems to be recently retired. Again, as somebody who's watched all the poker shows, plays a lot online, seems to do fairly well for herself online, built her bankroll online, and is now, taking her time doing live poker. So, I mean, I guess you could call these recreational players, but I mean, they're fairly experienced, probably better than both Ben and I combined. And no offense, Ben, but
No, it's no problem.
these people definitely seem to know what they're doing. They know the lingo. They can break down hand histories. So, I mean, across the board, it seems like, these aren't just people who play money on Poker Stars. Like they actually have their credentials, and we get to even see some deep runs and maybe more than deep runs from some of these players.
Yeah, really, the first half of season one really was more of a cash game focused, uh, situation for the poker vlog part of the season, and then season two is pretty much just all about tournaments, which makes sense when you're chasing the poker dream. I feel like that's winning a ring, winning a bracelet, winning a trophy. Obviously, if you do well in a cash game, that's great, but it's not quite as momentous an occasion than when you win a tournament. So I understand why they maybe shifted from the cash game scene to the tournament scene. And they do mention cash games here and there. I think Diana mentions how she had a very good 2024, 2025 of online poker, for example. So that pops in there, but for the most part, the poker discussed does emphasize tournaments, and for me, I do prefer tournaments over cash games anyway. So I did like that was more of the focus for season two. The basic structure of an episode is typically one or two players is kind of the spotlighted focus of the episode, although other players could bob and weave here and there. And it's covering, oftentimes, if it's the first episode the player appears in, we'll get a decent couple of sound bites about their background in poker, their professions, maybe some what poker means to them, and then maybe kind of a poker vlog style segments on one or two events taking place because the actual events covered in this season spreads multiple states, often for the Run Good Poker Series, but there's a couple other events like the WSB circuit events around the country, kind of going bobbing and weaving throughout the timeline. And I think the idea was this mostly covers chronological events rather than kind of going all over the place in the timeline. So it just happens they play an event this month, and then the next month they're playing elsewhere, and so on and so forth. And for the most part, there's not a ton of footage from the poker events as they're happening. For the most part, it's aftermath coverage, aftermath interviews, or self, vlogging on their smartphones during a break or after a tournament.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay because obviously phones are not normally allowed at the table. Rob brings this up a couple times when he makes some final tables. It's like they didn't really allow me to film, which is totally cool. We do see a little bit of footage on the rail and inside the casino, which is kind of cool. And sometimes there'll be, there'll be two people sort of talking to each other. Craig will be talking to Jay about like, you should play this hand differently. This is what you should do going into the break, which is really cool. Yeah, one of the things I like about this series is it covers the WSOP, the WSOP circuit, but also a lot of other events that I never heard of. I never really heard of this Run Good series that Rob really starts to focus on toward the end of the show, and a lot of other events that I just, I never heard of, these casinos I've never been to. So it really gives you a slice of what it's like to just, travel around the country, be chasing the different circuits, which is really cool, I think.
Yeah, and one of my critiques of season one was that it had the slick, smooth introduction of Rob, Fig, and KL, and they each had a distinct role. The intro song was fun. It was called a documentary series, but it really was more of a poker vlog series that was sort of made one episode at a time. And I don't quite feel that this season quite shakes that same situation where with episode one, I really didn't know what to expect out of the season because I knew that we were covering seven players, and we really don't see most of them. Besides Craig, Jay, Rob, and then Jim in the back half, really a lot of people could kind of come in and out of focus for multiple episodes at a time. And I really was expecting actually that episode one would have maybe each player covered a little bit so that we, like a traditional, maybe a different kind of series might have done. Because with episode one, just in and of itself, I was kind of lost a little bit, not quite sure, not quite sure exactly what kind of difference season two would have season one as far as its structure and focus.
Yeah, I mean, they all get credits at the end, which I really liked how the credits look, with each player and their name and photograph. So it's nice to, you have a little bit of an introduction there, but yeah, I would have liked a little bit more information on each of the players right here in episode one. It's okay if episode one was a bit longer, if it was 40 or 50 minutes to really just go through and introduce each of these players. And I'm also okay with the idea of episodes spotlighting particular players, because obviously in some events, some players don't do so well, and other events players do better. Yeah, a little bit more structure there would have been nice.
But as what we get in episode one is we get the new opening sequence. We're using the same song as season one. One time, my life. I don't know the words really because me and Sam we always watch these things at 2x speed. And actually, I love that song at 2x speed rather than at 1x speed.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny. So again, the two main subjects here are Craig Savage and Diana. Craig being a teacher. He probably puts up the top results of this entire cast in season two. And very impressive stuff here. And I just want to speak to just the overall results of this gang of players. Really quite impressive. I mean, we kind of joked about season one how they kind of put up middling at best results here. I mean, they might have been happy with how they played with it, just didn't do very well as far as final results. They really do put up in season two. That's probably the biggest improvement over season one is we see some really serious deep runs and not only and also the emotions behind those deep runs as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, these guys definitely know what they're doing. They've got skills. Obviously, not everything works out perfectly for all these players, but they have to fire second bullets sometimes. Sometimes just have bad runouts. But yeah, I mean, many final tables across the board. I guess we'll just give the big spoiler. Craig actually wins a bracelet, which is very impressive and exciting. And it's just really nice to see. We've talked about this before with the other documentaries. I mean, exploring people who just run bad, things don't go well for them. In the documentary To Be Determined, I mean, the player spotlighted in that. Kind of the message of the documentary is like, this guy shouldn't keep going in poker. People don't quite believe in him. People don't quite think that maybe he's got what it takes. So it's nice to see a documentary series where people are not only chasing the dream, but actually living the dream, getting deep results, getting significant cashes. They come into a circuit, they're not quite sure if things are going to go well for them. They're nervous. And then on their very first event, they do a deep run, they make a final table, and they pay the whole circuit off. And they know they can fire multiple bullets in future events. It's really, really nice to see that. And everybody comes off as very nice people. On the whole, like I really like this crew. I would follow this crew on future seasons. One of the things that I also really like about this series, and I think maybe the thing I like the most, is you can tell they all care about each other. They all like each other. They're on each other's sides. They're hanging out with each other. They have, nothing but kind things to say to each other, except, maybe there's a little bit of banter about eggs not being cooked properly and taking too long at the grocery store, which I really liked. But there's a sense of camaraderie and coming together really in this season that wasn't quite there in season one or in other documentaries that we've seen, and I really, really like that. It's really, really touching.
Yeah, because there were kind of like I call them filler segments in season one. Related to Fig and his Tesla and his car or whatever, and maybe Rob with spiders and whatnot. And at least up here, because it's a better sense of community amongst the players, those segments were a bit more enjoyable than the season one would have been if it had been, a similar situation. That said, though, I did find that with episode one, I was a bit confused when someone was talking about their poker play, if it was referring to last year or that year, like over the last year or from like a year before, like just getting a sense of what they were talking about as far as I played this event last year. Was it referring to 2024, 2023, or whatnot? No, that made things a little bit confusing for me a bit here and there. Otherwise, we with episode moving on to episode two, I guess here. The spotlight shifts to the two ladies in the gang of seven. Mika Richards, who unfortunately this is really her only episode of the entire season. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of her, or at least maybe we could have had just an introduction to her in episode one, and then seen her in episode two or three later on, so that we had a bit more of her. And then Diana, she talks about playing the ladies' event and having a table with Leo Margetts and Kristen Fox, which is pretty incredible. The last two ladies standing over the last two main events. Ironically, this is before Margetts would have had that. I think this is filmed over 2024. I think that it would have been before Leo Margetts' final table of seventh place. And we talk about she talks about one hand in particular on a day two of this event where she has ace three and runs into ace five on an ace three five flop. And it's pretty common where they'll discuss maybe like three or four hands, and then the last hand they talk about is like this big one that they go into a bit more detail of. And so again, in this hand, she gets very emotional recounting the situation because it was a very key juncture in the tournament, and it actually kind of prematurely ends her trip of in Vegas there, running there. And I feel bad hearing the stories, but I do feel that I did feel the emotions of that story, so I like that we were able to see that.
Yeah, I mean, the second thing that I think really the series gets right is just how tough it is to have a bad beat, how tough it is to, travel out to an event and you're doing everything right, and then one hand, you're just wiped out. You can tell that these folks really care about doing well in poker, really care about improving their game and making a name for themselves. Again, sort of like to be determined, I think it's a good encapsulation of how tough it is to be a poker player. And also, I mean, to just go across the country, in one episode they're in New Orleans, in another episode they're in Canada, and another episode they're in Vegas, you know, in order to chase the dream, I mean, you really have to put your best foot forward. You have to make sacrifices and do all this traveling. And I think this documentary series does a good job capturing that.
And it was at episode two that where my brain did kind of recalibrate, okay, this is going to be the structure of season two. So I
Mhm.
definitely enjoyed episode two a bit more than episode one. And each episode does end with a little like next time on Chase the Dream. And a very familiar clip appears at the end of episode two, which was from the trailer that we got to see when we were on the Rec Poker podcast of a big all-in ace queen against I'm sorry, Ace King and Two Queens for a bracelet by Craig here, and so episode three, The Precipice, actually covers Craig's run in the $500 freeze out event in June of 2025, and I was at first a little skeptical of this. Kind of feels like this could have been at the very end of the season. This is kind of your big finale type thing. But I guess if you are filming in chronological order, then I guess you don't want to go too far out of time to do that. But this is. It actually begins with an interview from Craig 2 years prior, and so it's definitely by far a Craig-focused episode. Diana does kind of be on the rail with him, supporting him, so she's kind of the secondary character of this episode. But I did like that we basically had a dedicated poker vlog for one tournament for one guy who goes the whole way.
Yeah, this is where I think it's important to have sort of a spotlighted character in a series like this. I mean, this is such a cool story, winning a bracelet. This is his first bracelet, and just the whole story is just so crazy that he's a short stack for pretty much the entire way till he gets to the final table. There's a guy who's a super pro who's at the final, chip leader, Arthur Morris. He has over chips in play, half chips in play. He thinks he's got this locked up. He busts in fourth place. And then Craig manages to take it down. And again, to really show that moment from Craig's eyes and show just how much it means for him and how, again, everybody is so happy for him. It's a really satisfying episode to watch.
And we get our first bits of Jim Reed here, a few interviews towards talking about Craig a bit. That was kind of cool to see him finally. And the only thing I thought maybe there may be a few too many post interviews with Craig afterwards throughout the episode. It could have been a little bit tighter pacing wise, but otherwise I thought this was definitely fun to see because we had seen one bracelet win in the Bracelet Hunt series we talked about last time. And again, for considering we probably covered six, seven, or eight maybe poker contents about trying to win a bracelet, and really only a handful of those people spotlighted took one down. So again, this definitely stands out to me as a memorable moment in poker media on YouTube for sure because of that reason.
Yeah, it's just very sweet and satisfying to hear, everybody toward the end of the episode having a little interview segment saying how excited they were. Again, just that sense of camaraderie and appreciation for each other is really sweet. Though the irony is that Day actually busts in the tag team event, so it's kind of funny to see that there's that sense of camaraderie, and yet in the tag team event they unfortunately were not able to play together. Hopefully next year they'll be able to play together and do a deep run because that'd be really cool to see.
Yeah, I wasn't really too sure about like how the Chase the Dream and Rec Poker like this kind of there's sort of like the Chase the Dream team and then there's the Rec
Mhm.
Poker people. I wasn't quite sure if it was 100% overlap or if there was maybe a few that were only in one and or versus the other. Wasn't quite made clear. Maybe it's not a big deal. I just thought it was worth mentioning though.
Yeah, I mean, Jim obviously is the head of RecPoker. This is obviously posted on one of their YouTube channels, so I'm assuming there's some sort of sponsorship arrangement. The other players, I don't think really mention RecPoker. I don't recall Craig or Day talking about it. Do you?
No, same for Mika. I'm not,
Yeah.
not sure about Jay. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite clear. No big deal. I just thought it worth
Yeah,
mentioning.
yeah.
Episode four kind of is a Rob Garner focused episode called Leap of Faith. It felt the most like season one out of all the episodes in a good way. I like that we got Rob reflecting on season one, his bankroll management, playing in the Run Good Poker Tour, playing a lot of online up until this particular time of his poker career, and then actually going to Choctaw, Chota,
Chalked up.
with the Airbnb with other some of the other Chase the Dream crew, and they sort of become roommates for a little bit there. And Rob talks about how he wanted to focus on playing with 100% of himself so that he could really build a bankroll or appropriately manage his bankroll and give himself the best chance to do well. And Jay also plays in the same circuit events alongside not in the like tag team events, but just like in his own way. And Rob gets off to a very good start. He makes the final two tables, and then makes it into day two. And really, he for the most part, it felt like he was, even if he wasn't making the final table, he was making a lot of day twos in the majority of the events that he played in.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a crazy final table. I mean, 17 all-ins without an elimination. It's just sickening. If I was sitting there, I'd be like, oh my God. I would be excited for sure, but it's like, wow, that is such a crazy story. Yeah, the Airbnb stuff is, I just think, really funny that, there's little groups, like there's the cool kids, Brett, Jay, and Day sort of stay up until 2 a.m. And then Rob and Craig sort of like to go to sleep early, which is how I am. So, no problem there. But, there's tension in the house, but it's not like, they're fisticuffs. It's just sort of like lighthearted stuff. And again, when you have a group of people where there's that kind of lighthearted bickering, it goes to show how good friends that they are. And again, that they're all, doing hand histories with each other. They're on each other's rails. They're checking in with each other. It really, again, just shows the camaraderie that's really in this group, which is really sweet to see.
Yeah, and Rob ends up getting fifth place in this one of these circuit events, winning about $6,000, which puts him ahead of the eight ball in a great way. And that kind of momentum kind of just carries him through this entirety of season two. He really stays ahead of the eight ball, playing well, running deep, making many final tables, and really keeping himself in a great bankroll situation where he's never worried about the money at any point in time.
Yeah, and it's good to see that. You can tell in his voice and in his how he's talking that he's happy to do these runs. Unfortunately, he doesn't quite get a ring. He doesn't quite get a bracelet. But I mean, still making 3 or 4 final tables is just always a good thing. So it's good to see that he's in high spirits and is able to look ahead to the next event.
Yeah, and then we get to episode five, and really up to this point, I was really enjoying season two, and then I really kind of just didn't quite vibe with the episode. This episode just kind of felt very fillery. It was just the pacing and the framing of the episode was just kind of all over the place. We opened with some grocery shopping and cooking scrambled eggs, which I know you said you kind of wanted. I didn't really care too much for that portion, and then we just cut right into some super heavy Jay backstory about his brother and dad dying, and it was an emotional story, but it just didn't like really vibe well with this sort of comedic opening act of the episode beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, the scrambled egg stuff I didn't find hilarious. I just, again, like as a sense of showing what the group dynamics are like, and that, again, they have this sort of ribbing with each other, and again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, when you have that little bit of ribbing of each other, it goes to show how good they are. I do agree with you that I think, these two scenes should have been put in different episodes. I mean, this is some really powerful stuff that both Jay and Greg are talking about. I mean, Craig's talking about, how his father's no longer with him and he wishes that his family could have been there to see him on the rail. And then Jay, I mean, wow, I mean, it's just some really heavy stuff going on here. I won't go over all of it. Yeah, I mean, I think, again, if this had been put in episode one and establish like here are these guys' backstories, here's how they are now as poker players, I think that could have been meaningful. Yeah, it just doesn't quite work here. I still found it compelling, and I'm still glad that this was in here. It's just it needed to be structured a bit differently.
Exactly. That's the big thing there. And given the last scene of season two, the Craig and Jay kind of had the most emotional backbone of
Mhm.
this whole season. But then really we won't see a ton of Jay for the majority of the rest of season two, actually. And he was definitely featured the most frequently out of everybody else up until this point, just not given a spotlight episode. So it kind of felt strange to only hear his backstory almost halfway into the season.
Yeah.
Episode six gets us to focusing on Jay a bit more and more Diana. Uh, we open with some like footage in the Airbnb house with the question of how much to stop playing poker ever again. And it definitely made me want to ask you that, Sam. How much money would you have to be, I guess, the smallest amount of money to never play poker ever again? What would be that number for you?
Well, I mean, I guess really any amount of money. I mean, I don't know, like $1,000. Because again, I don't play poker for money, so I'm trying to be the best poker player in the world who never once played it for money. So, just $10,000. I don't know. I'd like to, try to play the Mind Sport Olympiad, but wouldn't be a big deal for me, I guess. How
Yeah,
about for you?
again, I guess I enjoy the game as a game, like I would Monopoly, like I would, Settlers of Catan. So, it'd be a shame to never have to play it again. But I guess, there's plenty of other games out there. So I guess we'll just say 50K for me, because I
Okay.
got another 60 years to live, so that's a long time. So we'll say 50K, never play again. As long as I can still watch it on TV and stuff, then
Yeah.
it's all good. And then there's also an amusing bit in this House Life segment about like having parallel conversations like across the room. It was just kind of a funny little thing. It was framed well with the shot from the camera of that. Again, I like that scene a bit more than the House Life scenes from the episode 5 before it. Otherwise, the main part of the episode is really just Jay and Dana talking about poker events they played. We don't really see any footage, unfortunately, with a heavy focus on the mystery bounty event, which I actually like the dynamics of figuring out adjusting a strategy for what part of the event you're in, because the bounties only
hmm
kick in a certain distance into the event. So there's so much more money to make it into that round of play and with a big stack. So I did really appreciate the poker strategic talk about how to approach that event.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of bounty events, so it's interesting to see somebody else's perspective and to hear Dave be very enthusiastic about playing mystery bounties and getting quite a bit of money. I mean, getting $1,500 off of a single bounty, so good for her. Yeah, that was interesting to see.
But unfortunately, again, the ratio of post-mortem hand discussions and versus actual poker content
hmm
definitely skewed a bit too heavy towards the show rather than the tell rather than show. And so I didn't feel that maybe it was the right balance. I wanted to see more of the action happening unfold. And I know it's hard. It's not really anyone's fault that they can't just have their cameras recording the table at all time. But it did kind of make the poker a bit less exciting than it could have been.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can film a little bit from the rail or in between breaks, talk a little bit about it. I think that's probably the best you can do. I mean, there's just not much you can really do otherwise.
Yeah, but I mean, so again, I think better than episode 5 for me, but I think it was still weaker than the first four. So I was kind of concerned we were kind of maybe a little bit less, a bit maybe a mid-season lull, because a lot of television series, they have the fresh storylines when the season first begins, and they have the
Mhm.
finale stuff to kind of tie it all together, but the middle stuff sometimes kind of has to hold the torch, and that can be a little challenging sometimes. Episode 7, though, we finally get another member of the crew we hadn't seen focused on yet. We have Brett Keams, who's
Mhm.
the editor who did a lot of editing for Chase the Dream, and he's also a poker player. He had a son. He talks about. We see some footage of him and his son. That's very touching. And we get a bit more of him with playing in the double stack Choctaw events, and that's kind of the main poker content here is his run in that event.
Yeah, Brett seems like a really good guy. His sort of story is he's, a pretty good poker player, but he just can't quite seal the deal, can't quite get his ring. And unfortunately, he comes up just short again, which is, such a shame. But and you can tell like how sad he is too as he's recounting the story. One of the things we didn't really mention at the start of each episode, it tends to be like a little clip, and then, it goes into the intro to kind of set the mood for the episode. And this one, it's Brett slamming a soda into a trash bin. You don't see it, you just hear him talk about it. So I mean, it really establishes his character and goes to show like he really wants to seal the deal and get that ring. And it is nice to hear that, at the end he's able to say like I have a foundation to build my bankroll on. I can go and take my son on vacation, which is really sweet to see. But you definitely want him to get that ring, and that's a sign of a good documentary when you're rooting for the people in it. So it's a good job there.
But I did feel he was maybe perhaps a little too emotional about finishing second, because second means it's a lot of money still. It means you played great, and he, doesn't think he did. He says he didn't blow it heads up. So I
Mhm.
feel like, what, you're only going to win, what, half of your heads up battles anyway. I felt that, he maybe should have been a bit more upbeat about his finish, honestly.
I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I mean, you can tell it's hard to be in that situation, right? I mean, it's hard to be
Yeah.
heads up for anything and to come up short. I mean, I've lost heads up battles in the past, and it's definitely discouraging. So, I don't want to say like he shouldn't have done this, he should have done that, but yeah.
Okay. But see, it was at this point where obviously each episode is very much its own self-contained story about a player or two or an event or two, and it really, I had come into the season maybe expecting a bit more connectivity of the episodes, because outside of maybe the house, the Airbnb stuff being over the course of multiple episodes, really the episodes were very in their own continuity bubble. There wasn't a lot of overlap really, and so it made me it made me wonder maybe if the mission statement of season two was maybe not quite being uh, upheld at this point.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, as you mentioned, chronological order, it seems like the episodes are all sort of strung together like that. Obviously, you see people return later on. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell what exactly the storyline is like in broad strokes, but I do think there's some connective tissue, and especially toward the end when they're sort of wrapping everything up. That even though Craig won his first bracelet, he still wants to prove himself. He wants to prove that it wasn't a fluke. As we just mentioned, Brett, gets second so many times, doesn't quite seal the deal. He wants to finally seal the deal. There are little things that you can detect here and there. They're just not as overt as storylines like in Super Size Me, for example, where the storyline is him eating McDonald's for 30 days.
Yeah. And from episode 8, entitled Rec Poker Weekend, we get to see a lot more about Rec Poker. This is really kind of our best episode to really learn more about what Rec Poker is, who's behind it, the mission statement of Rec Poker. And Jim Reed finally hops in the editing here, and he's focused on along with Rob, and really from this point of the season onward, it's Rob takes over the majority of the focus, which is fine, just worth mentioning it.
Mhm.
And this episode begins with Rob going to Minnesota, which is meant to be a 72-hour trip to Running Aces to play with lots of rec poker players. And we get to hear about both Rob's take on what rec poker's mission is. We learn about Jim Reed, what's his sort of connection with rec poker, and among other things, we also get to see some other stock footage that I appreciated, such as Moneymaker's 03 win.
Yeah, this is definitely the sponsored by Rec Poker episode. No offense, I like the episode fine, but yeah, this is definitely like, this is what Rec Poker is, explaining what the organization is, where Jim comes from, where other people associated with the team come from. And the action does slow down a little bit because it's so focused on introducing this organization. But Jim comes off really, really well. He seems like a really great guy. Really trying to build a community of recreational poker players who again aren't firing the high roller events. They're not necessarily even going to the main event. They're playing in their local communities in Indianapolis and Chicago and these cities outside of the main circuit. So it's again really nice to see this organization out there. We do see a little bit of action toward the end with Jim making a final table end event, which is always nice to see. And then, yeah, Rob starts to really sort of make his run and make his presence known in this, doing well at the Rec Poker event, and then really having a good run on the Run Good event.
Yeah, it just watching this episode kind of made me smile that I beat 39 of these poker players from Rec Poker a few months ago, and you beat less than the majority of them. And again, we have no idea besides Jim, like if anybody from Chase the Dream was even in that nightly home game, whatever. Probably not, but either way, it's kind of cool to see some of the people that I played maybe online, on the screen here. And there was a guy named Taylor Maz who was wearing a Dunder Mifflin shirt, which I had the exact same Dunder Mifflin blue T-shirt, so it was kind of funny to see too.
Yeah.
And then Jim also mentions he has these shot glass bounties similar to Barry Greenstein signing his book or a Greg Raymer fossil to the player that knocks him out. So again, I always kind of enjoy seeing players do that. I mean, it adds more to the memories of playing poker with people.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I would do if I had to do something like that. Maybe books of poetry. I don't know. I have to think
Maybe
about
if
it.
you cut part of your beard and be like,
Ah, yeah, I like that.
Episode 9, entitled Time to Run Good, and referring to the Run Good poker series in Indiana, is where Rob goes to Indiana to play and try to accumulate those Player of the Year points for this series that spans multiple states. So this is only the first stop of this sort of circuit of events here. We get to see, much like how in episode 8 had a lot of rec poker background information, this episode gives us some more information about Run Good. And again, I'd never heard of it, so it's always interesting to
Mhm.
hear about series that I'm not privy to, because again, we're talking I guess on the lower end of the tournament buy-in amounts for these things. I mean, we have the thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in the WSOP or the EPTs and all that, and then you have the circuit event, which is maybe the 500 to $5,000 buy-ins, and then this is more in the multiple hundreds for the tournament buy-ins. And so again, a bit more entry level for those newer players.
Yeah, again, this is sort of sponsored by Run Good Poker Series event. You learn a lot about what this series is, as well as the co-founders and where they're coming from, what they did during COVID, the charity work they've done. They partnered with Boston Rob of all people to do things, which is kind of cool. And then, yeah, you get really from this point onward, the Run Good Poker Series really occupies the edit. Rob just really kills it. I mean, does really, really well, making final tables here and there, having deep runs here and there. Unfortunately, we don't get to see a whole lot of action, though we do get to see him, walking out of the casino at the end of the day, telling his story, explaining what happened. So, a little bit of in the moment coverage there, at least after this has happened. But yeah, it would have been nice to have seen a little bit more footage on the rail, a little bit more footage inside the casino, personally.
Yeah, and also we don't really get a sense of how many events he's playing. I mean, he can at times like ramble through, breaking down how he did in certain events, but very quickly. So it's kind of hard to be like, okay, so how many events did he play? How many deep runs did he make? How much money is he up? I mean, I'm not suggesting he needs to go into his full, background of every single plus or minus dollar amount. I'm not asking for that, but sometimes it just felt like he would focus maybe 2 minutes talking about one event, and then 5 seconds for one event, and then 2 minutes for another event. So you're trying to figure out what was referring to what and how well the entire trip was going for him. And it wasn't really framed. I guess it's framed a bit that he's trying to go for Player of the Year and obviously win first place, but it's not really clear if this is like the end goal, or if this is just merely like the appetizer to the end goal. Like, is the end goal for Rob to win a World of the Poker bracelet, or is this or is the goal just to win something in general first place no matter what? That wasn't quite clear to me.
Yeah, it seems, I mean, he emphasized the player of the year chase so much that I'm assuming that being player of the year in Run Good is valuable to him in and of itself. Obviously, I'm sure if he wanted to win a WSOP bracelet, he wants to win one, of course. Yeah, I would have liked a little bit more information on each tournament too. He mentions at one point that he did at least one tournament with 20-minute levels, which, like, wow, that's really fast when you're doing a live event. I know playing online, I mean, 20-minute levels,
It's an eternity.
are quite. Yeah, I mean, I would have liked a little bit more information on how his, strategy maybe was changing compared to other circuits, and how his strategy in different tournaments was changing. That would have been nice. Again, not like you don't need like a huge explanation about it. Just a couple more sentences of going into this event, this was what my thoughts were. Going to this event, this is what my thoughts were. That would have been nice.
Or even just some on-screen graphics of his total cash numbers, or
Hmm.
number like percentage of caching or something like that. Because really, outside of the sort of like smartphone footage, and then maybe post-interview footage behind a stable camera shot, there's not really a ton of like fancy editing or any graphics really. So it's really just kind of the raw video footage for the most part.
Hmm.
Episode 10 is sort of the season 2 finale. It's broken into two parts called Living the Dream Part 1 and Living the Dream Part 2. Part 2 actually is by far the longest episode of the season. I think it's like 37, 38 minutes compared to usually
Hmm.
everything else was in the 20s. It's mostly focusing on Rob, but the other players do hop in a bit here and there. This is covering for episode 10. It's really two parallel tracks here. We have the A plot is Rob in Pennsylvania, and the B plot is Jim in Montreal. So our first ever multi-country, I think, coverage of Chase a Dream here. Very cool. Rob covers, for the most part, three events. He breaks down in detail: the opener, the deep stack, and the run good main event. In the opener, he has a encounter with Rigby, our favorite 33 deuce off poker player who I met fist bumped in Vegas a couple years ago. So it was very cool to have him be name dropped and mentioned in a story here. And he mentions how there was really one big confrontation with Rigby where Rigby made a big river bluff with the nuts, a river bet with the nuts, and Rob tried to figure out if he makes this call here, he's going to be a big chip later and be in a great spot here. And unfortunately, again, Rigby had the nuts, but against Rigby, that's one of the few players where I can understand why you might have to make a hero call like that.
And of course, you and Rigby were on screen at the same time, and the CBS Sports broadcast. We have to mention that too.
Yes.
Yeah, it would have been nice if like there had been a bit of footage of Rigby, or if they had interviewed him. I understand it, that would have just been a nice sort of thing to put in. But yeah, it's kind of cool, and it's also again cool to see Jim playing. He's sort of vlogging in the car at one point, which like made me a little bit scared. Just focus on the road, Jim. But no big deal. Yeah, Jim unfortunately doesn't get like as exciting results as Rob gets. But again, it's nice to see that he just seems like a really cool guy. That he talks about playing poker. That's part of his dream, but his dream is also establishing RecPoker and being an industry professional. And he seems to be underway with that. So it's really cool to see.
I mean, I would say I'm a bit biased because we did interview him for an hour and a half not too long ago. But yes, he's definitely one of my favorites of the cast here. And we probably get just enough of him where I don't know if it ripped off that he was one of the Spotlight Seven. I mean, it didn't seem for the first half of the season, so we do get to catch up with him a bit more by having him be a bit more focused in the back half of the season. He and I think the first time ever me seeing him without a hat, I just thought it was kind of funny as a shot of him not wearing a hat. And I think every other time I've ever seen him on video, he was always wearing a hat. So. It's
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
little detail I thought was funny. And then Rob talks about his run in the Run Good main event, where he actually makes the final table and
Mhm.
becomes the chip leader of three left, makes it all the way to heads up, but then unfortunately, just a bunch of card dead or running card dead after that means that he goes out in second place, but takes home $22,000 and is in first place in the Player of Year race. So obviously not a win, but a pretty good consolation prize if you ask me.
Yeah, $22,000 is great, and it obviously shows that he's got the goods. I mean, if he's heading Player of the Year points, so it's a good thing to hear from him.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I knew that he had some good poker chops in season one, but really had a much better understanding of his game and his dedication to poker and his poker chops from watching him in season two. So, by season three, who knows? Maybe he'll be, even better if his trajectory is very promising.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see him go to the WSOP and just be Player of the Year or something. That would be so cool.
Yeah, Jim again. He doesn't make it to second place in any event, but he mentions how I think he said he was like we had a four in cash or something in Montreal, something really good.
Mhm.
The event he didn't do well and he made it pretty far, so he definitely has some legit poker chops as well. Are very very impressive, and I again look forward to seeing where he'll go in the future as well. Episode 11, again, part two of the finale. The main three spotlighted players here is Rob, Craig, and Jay. Now Rob's trip takes him to New Orleans for the Run Good Poker Series. And again, I just thought to myself, it would have been nice if he had said at some point in time earlier, I'm going to play the Run Good Poker Series. I'm going to hit every single state. We know it's episode one or something. That would be kind of just, in our head, be like, okay, we're progressing along this track rather than just being not blindsided, but just sort of brought into what the plan is going forward for him in that series.
Yeah, I mean, all he has to do is just say like, "Oh, the Ryan Good Poker Series takes place in Pennsylvania, New Orleans, and I'll be going to each of them." That's all that he really needed to say. Yeah, like I don't, I don't hate that we're all of a
Right.
sudden in New Orleans, especially because the food in New Orleans looks really, really good. I started getting hungry watching this episode, so I got to go to New Orleans sometime. Yeah, and it is also kind of funny to see Jay just kind of pop in and be like, I'm here to take Rob's glory, which is kind of funny. Unfortunately, he doesn't quite get as many things going as Rob does. But again, it's kind of again that sort of friendly competition is sweet to see, and that they all have a good time in New Orleans. Unfortunately, Craig just doesn't quite get anything going. He even says that from a poker perspective, his trip was a disaster, but he managed to come down with his wife and hang out with the crew. So he still had a good time, and again, that's really sweet to see that kind of perspective that he's able to still enjoy his trip, even if everything doesn't quite work out for him.
Yeah, and unlike season one, where it kind of ended on a mostly, above average for season one note, where Rob makes it far into the main event and cashes, their results aren't amazing in New Orleans. They do enjoy their food. I think Craig doesn't get any cashes. Rob gets seventh place in the final event of that series in New Orleans, but doesn't do amazingly well in other events. Besides making a fourth in the first event of that in New Orleans, his book-ending events were good. The middle part, maybe not so successful. But again, it's not a bad thing. I think New Orleans is a very fun location. We see a lot of cool food stuff, and I've never been to New Orleans personally. I know a bit about them from just randomly here and there, but nothing too in depth. So it was good to always see more of New Orleans. And really kind of the last, 10, 15 minutes of the episode finally kind of tries to tie in season two together to, with some successfully tying in, but it felt a little kind of tacked on at the end. The first part being the question, what's next for the Chase to Drink Poker Crew? And again, they put title cards in each episode to break up the sections, and so this was one of them. Each player is asked a question, and we get to hear everyone's take. And again, it was nice to see each player one more time before the season ended, since we hadn't seen someone for a while.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded if this had been broken off into its own episode, just to give it a little bit more focus and touch it up. It's okay for what it is. I really like that we get to hear everybody's takes. That they're not saying things like "I'm going to win the main event next year." They're not letting all their success go to their heads. They're pragmatic about it. They want to build their bankrolls. They want to expand their horizons, and obviously hang out with the crew and get that camaraderie. And then the final scene is Jay giving Craig a shirt with his dad and him on it, saying like father, like son, which I thought was really, really sweet. You can tell that Craig was touched by it. I like that that was the last moment to, again, just remind everybody of the friendships that they're making and the camaraderie that they're building together. I thought that was really touching.
It was nice, but again, it kind of spoke to how disjointed the season two kind of was. That this is basically kind of referring to episode three where Craig won a bracelet, and episode five where Jay won. I mean, discussed his the tragedies in his family history. But again, to have it all be at the very end, episode 11, where you might have forgotten all about about both of those stories before you would watch this episode if you weren't rewatching stuff. So, and again, it was touching. I liked that they tried to put some sort of emotional hook to the season, but it didn't feel like that was really one of the priorities of season two, so it felt a little bit out of place.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. I mean, it could have been moved into an earlier episode when that discussion was being done. I think it's fine for what it is, especially because the last two interviews are Craig and Jay, and then you have Jay and Craig together. So I do think there's a bit of structure there.
No, it's true. But again, it's just again, if it just with me, if my godly editing button, if I was going to rearrange the season, just I'm going to tweak a few things to make that seem more powerful and more on theme with the overall vibes and focus of the season.
Mhm.
So again, as far as my overall thoughts here, I thought that the early episodes I liked how we kind of had person's backstory and then them playing poker, and then it kind of didn't quite adhere to that structure as a lot of players would completely be out of focus, and it became more about Rob and a sort of a poker vlog style, which is fine. I don't think that any one element of the season was bad. I just didn't think that as a collective 11 episode cohesive season, it wasn't quite as polished as maybe I was hoping.
Yeah, some scenes needed to be moved around, I think. Maybe a future structure to do would just have 7 episodes with one episode focused on each player, maybe. I don't know. Some sort of structure or something to just make it all sort of flow together cohesively. But I liked it overall. I mean, as you know, also in terms of the production value, I mean, it'd be nice if they got some professional cameras, if they managed to have some microphones. There was, some noisy audio in there and things like that. But again, as sort of like a low budget effort, these people filming themselves on their phones, I think it's okay for what it is. I enjoyed the episodes as a whole. I thought I learned more about poker and got a good sense of who each of these people is. And I will be definitely, following them moving forward. I would see season three, and I would see these people in season three.
Yeah, again, if I'm going to break down this season into the three core elements, the poker, the players, and the directorial editing pacing, I think it got two of those three things down very well, the emotions and the players' works. I just think that, again, it's not meant to be this fancy schmancy high budget documentary series. It's mostly just a lot of simple interview footage and live, after on a break, video diary type stuff. And so, but I do get the sense, and I think Rob had confirmed to me that they would sort of, make one episode, finish it. Okay, now let's make the next one, rather than film everything all and then edit things after the fact. That probably is maybe too much work or not something that they wanted to do. But if they did that, I think that would have made a much more cohesive, connected season.
Yeah, that's what they should try to do moving forward, I think. If you want to do like little clips, upload little clips of things or do little vlog updates while these events are happening, I think that's cool. But yeah, like maybe in the future, film all the footage and then do a polished version. And then, yeah, if you want to upload a couple highlights, you can do that along the way. I think that's a good idea.
I mean, shows like Arrested Development, Dragon Ball Z, they would do re-releases of their content where, like Arrested Development season 4 was on Netflix with individual episodes, and then they did a re-edit where it was all in chronological order. So I always feel like if you gave me all of the footage, and I would probably, make my Ben edit director's cut and have it be the way that my head would have liked it. But again, I'm happy with what we saw, but I just think that that's just a consideration maybe for the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as far as we're discussing players chasing their poker dreams, it's only fitting that we discuss us chasing our dreams because we finally have, after a long wait, the full schedule for the 2026 Mind Sport Olympiad. Seven poker events, just like last year. So I imagine it'd be the same structure for the points as far as your top five finishes. I did bring up to the RecPoker Discord that this is now out. So maybe we'll see if maybe some players might want to join us for this endeavor in this year's events. Unfortunately, due to work, I'll probably miss a good number of these events, sadly, but I'll try to maximize my game in the ones I can play. And we can just, if you want, Sam, we can just go over each event and our take on the selection of the events.
Yeah, so seven events, as you mentioned. Five card draw is in the evening on Sunday, February 8th. Remember, this is a European event, so I think this is going to be starting at like 7. Is that correct? On Sunday, 7, it's East Coast time. And then Thursday, February 12th is 7 card stud high low. Then Tuesday, February 17th is 6+ Hold'em. Then Sunday, March 1st is horse. Wednesday, March 11th,
That's March 2nd, I believe.
March 2nd, excuse me. Monday, March 2nd is horse. Wednesday, March 11th is deuce or 7 triple draw. Saturday, March 14th is Texas Hold'em. And then finally, Saturday, March 21st is Omaha. It doesn't specify if it's pot limit or no limit or not. I guess it would
It's
be
probably pot limit though, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I really wish there had been more events. They did 7 events last year, and I felt that was just too few. There's no heads up events. There aren't 8 game mix. There's no Badoogie. I appreciate that they're doing,
No Raz
you know,
either.
yeah, I mean, I think it's just too few. I mean, if you don't want to have 20 different poker events, I get it, but I think 12 would be good. It gives, I mean, because of variance and being card dead and all that, I think you need to give players a lot of opportunities to get points and do well. Um, I mean, just sort of looking at the schedule here, I mean, they've got all these other events. I don't know what abstract really means, honestly, but they've got like 10 different abstract events. They've got a bunch of multiplayer events. It looks like they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chess events. I mean, I think that they could, if you have all these other events in all these other fields, I think you could beef up the poker events too and add, at least 2 or 3 more poker events.
Yeah, I also kind of question the selection. So again, we have five card draw, which we didn't have last year. So maybe they're just trying to rotate the games out. But no Raz and 8 game mix, which are two of my favorite and best games. So that definitely hurts. And 7 card stud high low, and 5 card. Again, I'm not thrilled about those games personally. Even if I could play all the events, I do like that my new expertise of just 7 triple draw is still in there, but no fusion. I guess 6+ Hold'em is a variant of Hold'em that's not fusion, but I don't know. Again, not my favorite. And I mean, obviously you gotta have Hold'em, you gotta have Omaha in there, but those are both towards the back end of the season, which is kind of strange. Usually you probably want to lead in with a fan favorite, but yeah, I'm a little surprised that was their selection, but maybe next year will be better.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like I'll be able to play all of them. I mean, knock on wood, assuming nothing comes up. I mean, 3 of the 7 events are happening on weekends, so that's kind of nice. Texas Hold'em is scheduled for a weekend, and Omaha is scheduled for a weekend, so maybe the registration will be a bit bigger. Obviously, I mean, they released the schedule today. This whole thing's supposed to start on February 6th. Giving your players just a little over a week to learn about the schedule is I don't think the fairest thing in the world. Registration is not available yet. That starts next week. So even less time to sort of register and sign up for things. Yeah, they really kind of botched this year, I think. Yeah, I mean, I've been playing a couple tournaments lately. I've been doing super well. I cashed in a Badoogie event yesterday with 50 chips left in my stack. I managed to squeak my way into the money. So I don't have high expectations for this. Obviously I'll play my best, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, but given the number of events I'm going to probably miss due to work, I really have no expectations to finish, obviously, in the top three like I did last year. I'll just try to do my best in the events I can play. But I given that I'm as long as I'm happy with how I play in an event, it's not as big. But once you finally win that first medal, it's so much less pressure on you. So I'll probably be able just to enjoy the little bit I can. And again, it's just a fun little thing. Aaron Robertson, who we reviewed Game of Golubov while back might be joining us for the MSO this year, so maybe I'll can just transfer my good luck and fortune to him, and he'll have a surprise good opening year in the events. And again, if anybody from Rec Poker does decide to join the MSO, let us know. That'd be cool. I'll root for you as well, and maybe we can have a little mini uh, competition, see who can do the best out of the Rec Poker aficionados. That'd be kind of cool. As far as what we want to cover for our next podcast episode, Sam actually mentioned during our end of year special a TV series called Lucky that was made about 20 plus years ago. I found the whole series on YouTube, and it's a dark comedy about a poker player or gambler in Vegas. So we might do a little TV review podcast style for our very next episode to cover that. What do you say?
Yeah, it stars John Corbett, who was the guy from My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It was nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Writing in a Comedy Series. So maybe, just maybe, it'll be better than Tilt. It only got one season, 13 episodes. So, knock on wood. Looks like the Coen brothers did it. I've never heard of them. They wrote the script for Cop Out, directed by Kevin Smith. So. We'll see about that. Yeah, I've never heard of these guys, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I really have no idea what to expect about it. I mean, I just sort of had heard about it through the grapevine. I just saw now that it was nominated for an Emmy, so maybe it'll be good. Maybe,
And it's
maybe.
definitely a different genre than Tilt was, so it'll be definitely a little bit harder to compare, point to point about which show is better or worse. But as long, it's a dark comedy, so as long as I laugh a few times, that's usually the main goal of a TV show like that. So, if I laugh twice an episode, that's still better than Tilt. So, low bar to beat.
Yeah, pretty low bar.
And obviously,
Well,
if there are any poker scenes in the show, we will do a full breakdown of each one to see how realistic it is. Obviously, with comedy, you can kind of maybe you give a little bit more writer's license to be a bit less realistic or sensible. But again, we'll try to see if that all fits in the context of the show, if it makes sense or not.
yeah, and if there's any other media that's out there in the poker world that you'd like us to review, please let us know. We're obviously happy to review any documentaries like Chase the Dream or scripted dramas, films, what have you. We're also happy to look at poker scenes in different pieces of media. So feel free to drop any suggestions you've got in the comments.
And if you're going to play in the MSO, let us know in the comments section. We'll be rooting for you as well. And we'll definitely be updating you guys as the MSO takes place, as we always do with our most recent performances, as it coincides with the release dates of our episodes as over the February to March part of the year.
Yeah, and we're obviously following any news in the poker world. Nothing really exciting happened except for Jungle Man fighting in a boxing match, which I saw the clip of it. Poor guy, geez. It was, I guess, kind of a sucker punch. I don't know. I mean, did you see the clip of this?
I didn't see it. I'll watch it some of the time, but that's pretty
Yeah.
crazy that it happened. I mean, I know that like the whole Jake Paul thing, guy goes from YouTube streaming to fighting, so it's just funny to see someone from poker, I guess, get involved in that same gimmick. But I can't take a punch, so I'd be terrible in that.
Yeah, me too. I could not do boxing to say, just even with the head gear on, I just would freak out. Not good.
Yeah. But anyway, guys, thank you for listening for this long. We'll see you next time. Enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, enjoy your poker on TV.
I'm gonna go chase the dream by taking a nap.